So welcome back, everyone. I hope those of you who are able to attend our first session really enjoyed the under the hood of FileMaker 19. And I'm thrilled to welcome you to our first panel discussion of Claris Engage 2020. My name is Janine Campbell, and I am your co-host, along with Rosemary Tigi, for Claris Engage this year. We have a very exciting panel, and we're keeping Robert Holsey quite busy today. We will be digging into add-ons and the open platform. This changes everything, moderated by Robert. But before we get started, I'd like to give you some tips on having the best experience with WebEx today. We highly recommend that you use your computer audio to participate in today's WebEx. If you have limited bandwidth, you are able to access telephone numbers to dial in by selecting the 3 horizontal dots in the bubble at the bottom of the WebEx screen to enable dial-in. If you need any support or have any technical issues during today's session, we've included WebEx technical support phone numbers and contact information in the chat in the side panel of WebEx. We also recommend that you shut down other applications that may draw bandwidth during today's WebEx. We additionally, in order to minimize distraction for our panelists, we have disabled two-way chat during this WebEx. However, we know that you're going to want to ask some questions, and as time allows at the conclusion of this discussion, we will do our best to try to accommodate some audience questions. And in order to do that, you simply turn on the Q&A panel by clicking the little question bubble at the bottom of the WebEx screen. It will open up the Q&A panel on the right-hand side of the WebEx window. And I ask that if you have a question, you send your question directly to me. And then I will do my best to source a few questions and send them over to Robert, our moderator, again, as time allows at the conclusion of this panel. And with that, I have a few more instructions for all of you. You do have the freedom to decide how you'd like to view our panelists today. WebEx allows you to view either one person speaking at a time or many people speaking, the entire panel in grid view. All you want to do is hover at the top of the WebEx window where you see those 4 little boxes and select that, and it'll allow you to change the view of what you're seeing and how you're viewing our panelists today. So feel free to have it your way as you view today's WebEx. And with that, it is my great pleasure to introduce a very good friend and colleague, Robert Holsey, and this esteemed panel of experts to discuss add-ons in the open platform. Robert, I pass the virtual mic to you.
Thank you, Janine, and hello, everyone. Welcome to our panel, Add-ons and Open Platform. This changes everything. I am thrilled to have this team of experts, or this panel of experts, to talk to you about how the introduction of JavaScript and our add-ons is going to change everything about how we do development on the FileMaker platform. Now, we're joined here today by Ernest of Proof Group, Todd Geist of Geist Interactive, Claus Lavendt of DataManix, and Cris Ippolite from iSolutions. Now, I'd like to kick things off by asking our panel a question about add-ons. You know, we've talked about how this changes everything from how we do development, how we interact with customers, and I'd like to hear from their perspectives of why they believe that's the case. And I'd ask Claus if you could kick us off there, making sure that you unmute your mic.
Thank you, Robert. And actually, thank you to the entire team at Claris for bringing add-ons to our platform. This is truly groundbreaking. I'm not sure if everyone really comprehends how groundbreaking this is. A lot of the innovations that has happened to our platform over the years has been coming from the community, sort of modules or plug-in features and so on, and then as native functions in the platform. But this add-on feature is really groundbreaking and something that is coming directly from the engineering team at Claris. And the reason I'm really happy about this is every single day we try our best to help our customers being more effective and optimize their workflows. So that's what our work is all about. We are trying to solve problems. We are trying to optimize workflows. but are we optimizing our own workflows? Do we take our own medicine? And I mean, writing code better and easier and reuse code is something where we now have a great tool to build these add-ons where we can reuse code. So one thing is to have JavaScript widgets or other fancy features in our apps, but where I really think this is going to be a very powerful feature is where we begin to code smart instead of doing everything over and over again. So building small modules that we can insert into our own code. And of course, we can share that as well throughout the community. This is truly groundbreaking, in my opinion.
Hey, Cris, could you jump in here as far as, you've been a leader in the training space for Claris for quite a while. You're running iSolutions, so you've got a fairly large development team that you work with. How does add-ons fit into both, sort of how your development team will be working moving forward, and thoughts on how add-ons, from a training perspective, as you're bringing new developers into the platform, how that changes?
Yeah, that's interesting. Thank you, Robert. I'll address the training thing first, because it's, people come to myself and others in our community for training, and I think the reason that they're doing it is because they're inspired to do something with the platform. Whether they know nothing about it or they know something about it, they're inspired. And to me, I really want to show them all the cool stuff that we can do. I spend a lot of time in my live classes, like showing how to integrate JavaScript into, workflows and kind of trying to continue inspiring folks. But in all honesty, certainly we could get tripped up in how potentially complex it can be, what the overhead is to, if I focus on JavaScript integrated add-ons, for example, while those are very complicated to do, they've always been worth the effort. And so when I get into a training situation with folks and they're inspired, I don't want them to be, sort of like distracted by the fact that, oh, I want this functionality and it's so cool and I'm so inspired by this, but wait, how do I do this? And so to me, it's very much about being able to take that entire functionality, continue being inspired by the stuff, integrate it into their own things while they're just sitting there in a classroom even, without having to really be encumbered by the overhead from a coding standpoint. So while the modularity of this is amazing to me, I think really the fact that people can be inspired and integrate and then move right on to the next inspiration like moments later is what I think is probably one of the coolest hidden features about add-ons in the platform now.
Yeah, I love that, and that's really what we're trying to get at, where folks don't have to think too much about how to solve the problem that they're, from a technical standpoint, and really just focus on solving that problem so that they can get on to the next level of issues. Can you speak a little bit about when you're doing when your team is doing development and you're building apps for customers? Does add-ons change your approach to that? Like if a customer comes in with a set of requirements, does add-ons give you an opportunity to sort of snap these things together and build to what the customer is asking on the fly, or sort of how do you see add-ons changing your development process moving forward?
Well, I'll address that one. Well, certainly, we've been creating, and I think most on the panel here have been creating, if we, again, focus on the JavaScript parts of this, we've been creating these for many, many years now. And the overhead to do something like that has been significant, but it's always been worth it. Now, the problem, though, is when we're talking to a customer in a pre-sales discussion and they say, oh, it'd be great if I could have this, this component that has this, that, and the other thing, and I want to drag and drop and move these things around and have a Gantt and so on and so on. In the back of my mind, in the past, I've thought, oh, this is going to be so cool when it's done. But man, I'm nervous about talking to them about the cost and the time that this is going to add to the process. And maybe it gets bumped to a future phase. Now we can have these things more modular, take a couple of these things off the shelf and bolt these things on and continue to have the customers be really excited about the final outcome, rather than what it takes to actually get there. So it'll certainly be different moving forward in that regard.
Ernest, from your perspective, what are you seeing with add-ons? Have you had a chance to play with them at all? Sort of, what are your visions for add-ons moving forward?
Yeah, thanks, Robert. Look, I think that there's always been a tension in the community where, you want FileMaker to be FileMaker, and yet you have fairly sophisticated, complex UX requirements that, causes a number of us to go down these rabbit holes to build really sophisticated solutions and whatnot. And then it suddenly doesn't feel so much like FileMaker anymore. And the problem with that is that tension will always exist, right? And we've never really had an easy way to resolve that, because FileMaker needs to be more than just a productivity tool. It needs to be a space where we can bring all the richness of UI, all the intentionality of design into the platform, right? So what I see today is this real possibility. When we built Spark so many years ago now, I think almost 8-9 years ago, the integration of Spark into a new environment was expensive. As modular as it is, it was really expensive. And Todd can speak to this too with Modular FileMaker. We've been playing with this idea of modularity for a long time. But still, when it comes down to it, the integration of a new FileMaker component that's modular complex is until today fairly expensive, right? So what we're seeing here is really a huge leap forward where the cost of implementation or re-implementation is now almost zero. And that's a very, very big deal. The efficiencies of scale that provides, the ability for us to, as you say, not think about the process of integration, but really focus on the user experience itself and the fidelity of the data model or the architectural requirements or the user requirements and whatnot. That is where the energy needs to go. And I think this is where we're headed. So I'm super excited.
Yeah, you mentioned it. I think it would be good to hear from Todd, and Todd was leading the way with Modular FileMaker. I think that went up like 7 years ago or so. So I mean, Todd, you've been sort of pounding the pavement for this approach for a long time. Just your perspective on these first steps that we're taking of true modular design in FileMaker.
Yeah, as everybody said, it's really important. I've been trying to think about building things this way for a long time, because when I'm approaching a custom software project, I really don't want to do undifferentiated heavy lifting. So in other words, I don't want to do a lot of work to do the same thing I'd have to do in another application that provides no actual custom value to the customer. I don't want to do that. So we've always tried to build things very modularly, but really the only sort of true module that we had outside of plugins was a whole file. And in fact, that's how we ship some products. So LedgerLink, our QuickBooks integration product, is a whole file that you have to drop into your system to and then hook up to make work. And so what this represents is the first thing that's smaller than a file. So we can now take a chunk of functionality and basically just inject it into a file and use it. And that brings up a lot of benefits. And we talked about undifferentiated heavy lifting. We talked about spending the effort where it's required. But a couple other things that are super important is that the more often code is used, the better it gets. The more bugs, the more edge cases are ironed out. And when you have the ability to share code, that means that code is executed more and more and more and more times. So more and more and more bugs are found. So over time, if you're building things in a modular way, those modules, those add-ons, those chunks of functionality can get better and better and better and better. Where if you have to rewrite something from scratch every time, you're basically starting over with all the bugs that are going to come from trying to write anything from scratch. But if you can reuse stuff that's already been used, the bug load is much lower. And that is also super important. We really don't want to be spending time on getting the Stripe API hooked up. I mean, good Lord, that really only needs to be done once in FileMaker. Like it really does. Mm-hmm. We don't need to do that. We just need to get that stuff done, packaged up so we can share it out. So it's a huge day, obviously one that I've been thinking about for a long time, and super excited to see what people start to do with this now that we have this capability. It's going to be very cool. I have to change some mindsets a little bit, think a little differently about how we design solutions, how we build solutions. But I think over time, it's going to become very obvious what the value is to this new model.
Awesome. Changing topics a little bit, a big part of this is also our JavaScript integration. And clearly there's a a win when we combine the two, and as we've talked about, making that available to all developers, and that even those that don't need JavaScript. But we're already seeing there's interest around JavaScript, finding people that already know JavaScript. And Cris, for you, I know that you've had some students that you've been bringing into the community. Oftentimes they have JavaScript experience already. Can you kind of speak to the excitement you've seen for JavaScript in some of those classroom environments, and sort of what it enables folks that already have that skill set coming into the FileMaker platform?
Yeah, I do this little thing in the classroom environment where I talk about things. I show the sort of the finished product to sort of kind of, do the surprise and delight part first, and then get people more inquisitive about how maybe that happened. And I often do these at the end of the days, because we do sort of a boot camp style classroom experience for live classrooms. And I always save the JavaScript stuff till the end of the days, because I get the widest eyes. I get people who kind of bloodshot eyes, sort of listening to me talk for several days. All of a sudden they perk up in their chairs and they look at this stuff and they go, well, how did you do that? How did you get that thing to do this? And da 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 da. And it's always like some JavaScript implementation. So the delight part has been really neat for me to see. And then the second I flip under the hood and show people, oh, this is how we're doing this. We've got some JavaScript. It's in a web viewer and it's doing this. Immediately, the people in the crowd who have some JavaScript expertise, come forward, and they're like, oh wow, wait a minute, I can leverage what I know over here in this code base inside of FileMaker. Let's talk about that. And even I've had the pleasure of teaching every one of the 42U student sessions as well too. And I don't mind saying that while they're very engaged and really love FileMaker, and they've been a great series of students to teach, the part where I say, okay, go talk amongst yourselves or go do some fun stuff tomorrow before you show up, what everybody is gravitating towards is the cool integration of other technologies into the platform, specifically as they pertain to JavaScript and some of the neat things that we can do there.
So I think something that's related to that, because we're seeing folks that are really excited about JavaScript, but there's questions around, well, if I'm going to learn JavaScript, why learn FileMaker at that point? I could just do this whole thing in JavaScript. Todd, I saw that smirk that you just made there. Maybe you can speak a little bit to why JavaScript together with FileMaker is so powerful.
Yeah, so that's a great question. So there's a lot of things that you can only do in JavaScript in terms of a FileMaker experience, and we've seen all those great things that are showing up. But try to build a form. Just try to build an HTML form with validation, and you will discover very quickly why FileMaker still has a very big part of our business. It's actually very challenging. So if you're building applications that have a lot of data entry, that have a lot of forms and list views and the kind of things that we've typically been building for years and still make up a huge chunk of any application, that's actually pretty challenging to do in a JavaScript environment, even using some of the frameworks like React or Vue or whatever. Yes, you can do it, but there's really, being able to design a layout in FileMaker and design a layout in JavaScript is really, night and day in terms of how fast you can do it. And in terms of doing all the field validation, getting the form bound to the database in the back end, all of that. So it's the data binding, really that core piece of the data binding that comes for free in FileMaker. That is a tremendous amount of work to do in the JavaScript world. You don't get any of that for free. So there's definitely a reason to do that. And the other thing is that, if you're building a JavaScript app, it doesn't care how you're building it, you need a database. And FileMaker is a perfectly great database to build applications with, whether or not you're embedding it in the file like we've been talking about with these add-ons, or just building custom web apps. It's a great database. So the marriage of these two, to me, it's a real sweet spot. We can use the JavaScript stuff to do the really high polish, high interactive, the animations, the things that we can't easily do inside of a FileMaker environment, but we still get to use FileMaker for what it's really, really good at, and where we can be really, really productive, which is building forms, writing business logic, doing security, all that stuff.
Management.
When you write a web app, you got to do all the security from scratch. With these integrations, one of the sweet things about it is that the way the JavaScript integration works is you're just using the FileMaker login session with the privileges applied to the login that that person logged in with. So they get the same privilege sets. So you don't have to worry about security. It's all built in to that session. None of that comes for free if you're all in the web tech world.
Yep. And Claus, it looked like you had something to add there as well.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that I think a lot of people that are developing on the FileMaker platform are more creative-minded. At least when you ask around, there's not many very hard coding people, C coders or JavaScript coders. To me, that's a totally different. I use the terminology: are you a programmer or a developer? And that's maybe that's just me, but I mean, writing these things in JavaScript, like Todd was talking about, that's about writing code. And I mean, in FileMaker, drag and drop elements and connect the dots. To me, that's much more appealing, and it's much faster in terms of getting from A to B and getting a product done. And I mean, we saw in the keynote the examples of what has been done for during the COVID-19 response. I mean, building apps in a matter of days or a couple of weeks. That's not even possible. I don't know where that should be possible in the JavaScript world or in any other programming world. So that's where I find FileMaker as a very strong platform. We can very fast come from A to B. Not saying that everything is easy and everything should be easy, but it's easy to get started. And then you know, many of us has been here for 20 plus years. And there's a reason for that. It's appealing, and I think the most important thing is that we solve problems. We get stuff done, and that's very satisfactory, at least to me. So I'm not much of a code person. I can do the code, but I don't find pleasure in writing code like a JavaScript code or C# or whatever language we're talking about. So I'm so glad that the engineers at Claris has that pleasure to write that code. Then we can just, you know, use the tools that are provided, and you know, there's always a workaround, and now we just got some greater tools for the JavaScript implementation or integration. And I mean, this has been around since 8.5, where the web viewer came along. So we've had this capability for a long time, but we just needed that real integration between the web viewer and the FileMaker app, and now we got it, and now everything has just become much greater and a bigger pleasure to work with, because we omitted these things.
There's a very, very long tail of business problems where FileMaker is uniquely qualified to handle, right? And that is the problem of constant business innovation and constant change. As COVID has really shown us, you know, businesses that were having to move from analog to digital, and then from digital to better digital. I mean, the speed of innovation is really all about adapting, right? And we're accustomed to thinking about software development as this, you know, app store type process. Like you build a thing, it's static, and then you have a certain degree of market economics and scale to kind of make that viable. But really, the problem that nobody else solves well, is the other side of the equation, which is, again, the business innovation problem, which is, you know, I have a new problem today that I didn't have yesterday, right? And how do you do that? Well, the only platform that allows you to do that is one that lets you model the environment very quickly. So this is the key to me. You have to have a separation of concerns with your app development strategy, right? The things that Todd talked about, the rich UI, the rich interactive experience. You want the degree of robustness and sophistication to that, but you want the underlying data representation, the model of your environment, to be rapidly evolving all the time. That is the secret sauce, right? That is what lets people stay competitive day in, day out, and to be differentiated. So the case isn't really for add-ons. What add-ons does is makes the case for FileMaker, and that's the beauty of this, right? You're decoupling the problem in a way that allows FileMaker to really gain traction into the fundamental problem that all of us are dealing with today with businesses that are trying to survive or trying to be different or trying to innovate beyond the status quo.
Yep. Thanks, Ernest. Love it. So I'm going to be trying to interweave some questions that we're getting from the audience as well. And Cris, this is one coming or aimed at you around your LinkedIn learning that the folks are seeing. And if you have any recommendations on where to learn relevant aspects of JavaScript for FileMaker development. So I guess JavaScript in itself and then the combination of the two.
Sure. Well, I can give some insight. Several DevCons ago, there was a premiere of something that was called the LinkedIn Learning Path for becoming a custom app developer. You guys may or may not remember that. At the time, that was a thing that LinkedIn was doing. It's still out there, where they were coming to authors and saying, hey, if you were going to hire somebody who is going to be, whatever it is, in this case, a FileMaker custom app developer, what skill set would you imagine they should have? And I think the expectation at the time when I was asked that question was, oh, you should know about relationships and scripts and calculations, I did respond to that. You can Google it as I'm talking right now and pull that learning path up. But I think you'll be surprised to find out. And actually, Todd even called me out on this on Twitter back a few years ago, because I was talking about JavaScript, fundamentals, and even some Node stuff that was in there too. And, and so to me, when I was asked that question, the most honest response I can give is going back into the time machine and saying what, back in 2016, what I thought was important, and JavaScript fundamentals were right there on there. So to answer the question specifically, if you go check out the learning path for becoming a custom app developer, you'll see my recommendations on there specifically. But that was, several versions ago, or, a handful of versions ago. And I still believe that to be the case today.
Awesome.
I'd like to just mention Jeremy Brown at our company has been doing a lot of work in getting sort of introductory JavaScript information together for FileMaker developers. And he's got some materials that we'll be releasing soon in some form. So stay tuned. It's really aimed to be some sort of a learning path for FileMaker people who want to learn JavaScript and be able to do JavaScript integrations. He's been doing this for a long time, and he's got a good package that he's put together, and so hopefully pretty soon you should see that.
Well, and the other thing that's interesting about Jeremy's content, which I've seen and it's excellent, and I can't wait for people to get access to it, is that he's talking about his own journey. He wasn't, a JavaScript developer coming into this. He was a FileMaker developer and understood, okay, well, what parts do I need to know? And the answer for those that are watching this is, you don't need to know all of JavaScript to make it useful within this environment. There's a couple of key areas where you can focus and really get a lot of impact for that, educational investment. So I wouldn't be too freaked out by this. I myself didn't know a thing about JavaScript or what it even looked like if I was staring at it years ago, not too far before actually doing a JavaScript and FileMaker integration at DevCon, where I talked mostly about copying and pasting code snippets into FileMaker and making really cool things happen. So it doesn't need to be daunting. You don't need to dive into the deep end of the pool to have a significant impact in the work that you're doing within the FileMaker platform.
Yeah, it's sort of, Claus kind of touched on this. Claus, you were saying, you don't love the whole professional development, writing code yourself. But talk about, are you excited about the JavaScript integration, what that allows for, and sort of how do you envision yourself sort of interacting with it?
Yeah, we've been using JavaScript for some years as well, but this just make everything easier. And I usually say you have to find a purpose. It's not enough that you can make fancy calendars or Kanban boards or widgets or whatever it is, and it looks nice and animations. There has to be a purpose. And to me, I can learn pretty much anything if I can see the purpose. And I think over the years, I've had several sessions and some training sessions as well, where people are geeking into, oh, look at this nice thing. It's blinking and bubbling and whatever. And it looks so super cool. And I say, yeah, but what's the purpose? I don't know. It's just fun. Yeah, okay. So fun is fun, but work is work, and there has to be a purpose with this. And the modules that you are releasing, that Todd and Jeremy built, I can see there's a lot of purpose for those. In terms of the calendar, I mean, everyone should be able to see the purpose of a calendar. Everything goes by a calendar nowadays. People who are not working by a calendar, they are called like, what did they call it in flippers or hippies in the old days, right? So everything has to go according to a calendar. There has to be some events. And, you know, it's... I think many of us who have been on the platform for a long time, we tried to build this calendar natively in FileMaker, and it's not that easy. So when someone builds a calendar module, that be full calendar or whatever C code is building, or anyone else is building, where you can see, okay, I can really get something that is working. It's working in a way that people expect it to do. I mean, everyone has their Apple calendar or Outlook calendar, and if we build something into a FileMaker app, it has to work the same way. It has to look cool as well. And I mean, we used a full calendar and build a module ourselves for how we wanted to use it. And I mean, what we did were pretty much digging into the CSS in order to style it the way that we liked it to be, so it was coherent with our apps. And that's not a lot of work, really. All the magic JavaScript stuff that is going on is that's kind of under the hood. To me, it's well, maybe I give the impression that I don't know JavaScript at all, but I actually do. But I mean, it's not that interesting to me. To me, it's interesting to solve problems. And what goes on under the hood is nice to know when you're a little bit geeky. But it's the same with FileMaker. I don't need to know the C code that is written under the hood in order to make Draco work, or the interface layer. I just need it to work. So I'm super excited about the JavaScript stuff, but I'm actually more excited about the add-on stuff, the add-on modules, because in many other applications you have, and even in FileMaker, you have button bars. You just drag and drop stuff from a gallery. Well, we have uniform. We have the button bars that you can set up in a way, but we don't have a gallery. We don't have a gallery of pre-built, so let's say button bars or other objects. But now we can do that with add-on modules. And I think that's super cool. And like Todd said, it's also about ironing out all the bugs. And the more you use the code, the more you reuse the code, the better code you can build. And I mean, starting from when you build a contacts module for contacts, when you have done that 10 times, you start wondering, how can I make this smarter? I mean, that's what we do all day. We try to make our customer work smarter, or basically do as less as possible, so they can focus on doing something smart and making their business even better, right? So everything we can do with our systems and our apps that can take away manual labor from them, that's awesome. And I mean, I also think there's some cultural differences. The COVID-19 seems to have hit really hard in the US. Well, there's of course on the health stuff that is bad, but on the other side, it's forcing a lot of companies to think different, right? Because you have to move, you have to change your way of working. I come from a small country, and just in the city I live in, back in the 80s, there were maybe 20,000 people who were doing clothing. And basically over 1 to 2 years, all those jobs vanished completely. So there were around 20 or 30,000 people who needed to find another job. and they did. We created different jobs. So being in a small country, we have been used to having to adapt really quickly. And that's also why I like the FileMaker platform. That's also why I'm even more excited about the add-on modules, because it makes it easier for us to help our customers move even faster. And like you said, Ernest, yesterday I had a problem. Today I have a new problem, right? And you have to solve that really quickly. When I see other platforms like some very big enterprise systems, especially, it's not possible to move fast. And then when we get a call and say, I have a new problem, I need solved. When can you be done? Well, if there's nothing in the calendar, or maybe tomorrow, or already, or next week. So within this year, sure. And that's totally different time frames, and that's where I really like this stuff, and the platform as well. And that's where the add-ons really really can shine for everyone in the community, no matter if you're really advanced or if you're a new one on our platform. You can get some cool stuff like what Todd built and other in the community, but you can build your own, and you really should do that.
Yep, I believe me, totally agree there. And sort of again, building off of that, we've talked a little bit about, this add-ons being our first step in, this ultimate vision of just snapping together apps quickly. But a big part of really delivering on that vision is going to be making it really easy for the community to build and share these things. And that's where our marketplace is going to come into play. And I'd like to get your guys' perspectives. You're all business owners. You've put products out into the market, hosting it on your own website. Maybe Ernest, you can kick us off here, talking a little bit about why you think the marketplace is important, and sort of how you see using that moving forward.
Sure, absolutely. I think it's essential. I think the irony is that you can't really do custom well without an ecosystem of products to support you. So naive to think that you can do this all by yourself. As big a team as some of us may have, or as great a developer as one might be, that's never sufficient. Right? So what we need is a very, very strong community and pool and reservoir of products, of apps, of add-ons, of a variety of scale and targeted solutions that allow us to focus on the things that we do well. So not only do I think this is critical, I think that the test for whether this platform survives and flourishes is really the strength of this marketplace. And it's true. If you look at, so take a look at, say, Excel, right, or a spreadsheet. It will always be a productivity tool because it doesn't have the product space. And you can be a great Excel developer, you can be a great Excel consultant, but it will never be a platform by which you build your own apps that leverage the work that others have done already. And the closer we get to this model, the closer we get to the model of what open source has taught the whole world, the better we're going to be. So, all for it.
I just want to put in here that even the biggest companies in our community is tiny bit compared to other branches or other types of businesses. So there's no other way for us to do this than to share. And that's whether you can buy add-ons or products or whatever on our marketplace for money or for free. We are already a very sharing community, which is awesome. And then you can build some, buy some more advanced stuff as well. And the marketplace is really crucial, especially for the new ones that get on board on our platform. I mean, I'm glad that I started on the platform more than 25 years ago, because FileMaker was a much simpler product at that time. So I've had some time to learn over the years and evolve as the FileMaker platform evolves. But I mean, the new guys in our team, man, they have a lot to learn, right? When you get into the platform and you see, okay, there's a lot of potential, but how do I leverage this in my apps? And I mean, using the add-ons and the marketplace, that's where you can see, oh, this is actually possible. And with the add-ons, it's easy to integrate into my own app.
Yep.
I just want to add a couple things to the marketplace story. Like Ernest, I think it's essential. And I think you look at the platforms out there that are great platforms that handle, businesses from all over the world. They all have some kind of marketplace. I mean, even if you go, whether it's Salesforce at sort of the, the high enterprise end or the business end, to something like WordPress, which is technically free, right? Open source. But WordPress has a vast plugin ecosystem that is a mixture of free and for sale plugins. And some of those companies that just built WordPress plugins make a lot. I mean, they're big businesses. They're multi-million-dollar companies. Sometimes they get sold for millions of dollars. So this is it's a thriving ecosystem. And I always try to focus back on the idea that if you want problems to be solved, somebody has to get paid eventually to solve those problems in some way. You need economic activity for a platform to thrive. And so the marketplace in particular, now that we can make add-ons, this is great. We have a bunch of apps on our website, and that's great. But what the marketplace brings to the whole story is the discoverability, which is critically important. When you go to WordPress and you say, I need to do X, let me see if there's a plugin for that. Right within the interface of WordPress, you can do a search and find every plugin that there is in the market. You can find it for whatever feature you're looking for. And, sometimes you'll find a free one. Sometimes you'll find a commercial one. Oftentimes you'll find that the commercial ones bring extra polish and value that it's worth paying for. And so that discoverability is what's really important. We can make our web pages, and we do, and we will, but having one place for people to go, especially when it's integrated with the product, which it is now for the first time, there's two links within the product where you can go right to the marketplace. This is how you get discoverability. This is how people who are new to the platform find the cool stuff. And this is how vendors can spend more money on building great products as opposed to like trying to get more and more people to show up at their website. That's really important. So I'm thrilled that we finally have the integration with the product, and really looking forward to the next steps in that evolution, because it will mean a lot. We need thriving third-party ecosystem with lots of money changing hands for this whole thing to work.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and the integration with the marketplace that we added in this release of FileMaker is definitely baby steps. I mean, right now, as you said, there are links, in the launch center to at least get you to the marketplace. But it's really important to us that when you're doing development and you've got a problem top of mind that you're trying to solve, the marketplace should be sort of in your face at that point and saying, "Hey,
Absolutely.
There's solutions for you out there, and go drive folks there." We just had a question come in it's very much building on what we've been discussing that I love, and it's what are your thoughts about the business strategies for developers regarding add-ons? Do you see it as an internal use to speed up development, a product to sell or give away, or some other strategy utilizing them as a developer?
Yes.
Well, Todd, kick us off there, but I think I'm seeing a lot of all of you nodding your head, so it sounds like everyone's got a perspective, but kick us off, Todd.
So we will have, I'm sure we've already started to develop a set of internal add-ons that we will use for all of our custom products. Some of those add-ons will eventually become products that we'll sell or share in the marketplace, and others will be ones that we just internally use as part of our value add to when we go into a custom software development situation. I think that over time, we already have companies that only do products. We're one that does both, but there will be companies that evolve to do more products and less custom dev, and some that just use it internally. All of those things will happen. But in order for the marketplace to truly thrive, we need some part of it, getting back to that economic message, We need some part of that to be professional third-party vendors who are making professional third-party add-ons. That is what will keep it going throughout all the ups and downs of any economy.
Awesome. Thanks, Todd. We're just about out of time, but I saw a couple more of you. Just a real quick from Ernest, maybe on your perspective there. Any words of wisdom to the community?
I think whether you are a consultant, or you're building custom apps, or you're building a product or vertical, or you're building products for the FileMaker developer community, add-ons are going to be key, and not just JavaScript-based add-ons, right? I mean, I think the strategy is there's an add-on strategy for every level of FileMaker work and professional service that you provide. So I can imagine, for example, the integration story that add-on helps custom developers more quickly deploy internal tooling or scripts or packages that you don't have to rewrite and rewire all the time, and that just becomes a way to accelerate the kind of development process. And then you can just keep escalating from that, right? So you want to deploy internal products to your software teams. You want to move on to actually deploying full-fledged JavaScript components to the public or to the world. All that's possible. So I think you need to find your niche, what you do well, and you need to consider where it is that you want to spend your time, and then take the appropriate steps to get there.
Yeah, good.
Thank you. So look, thank you everyone on the panel. This was a really great conversation. We probably could have done this all afternoon. We've got a lot of great questions coming in. We will be following up with things on the community to answer some of these questions. But thank you all, Claus especially. I know you're joining us sort of late in the evening from the other side of the pond. But everyone on the panel, everyone that's called it or been listening in, thank you. I hope you join us in 15 minutes for our next panel. Where we'll be looking at performance optimization for FileMaker and FileMaker Cloud. So thank you, everyone, and enjoy the rest of Engage.